Welcome to Rico 12. I'm Justin. I'm your host and a beautifully imperfect, stumbling, bumbling child of an absolutely powerful and perfectly loving God and an addict. Rico 12 is all about exploring the common threads of addiction and sharing tools and hope from those in a similar path. We gather from diverse backgrounds, faiths, and places to learn and support one another. Our speakers represent various fellowships, addictions, and afflictions, thus showing the common threads of recovery no matter our addiction or affliction. Today's speaker for the 252nd meeting is Dennis T., a previous speaker on Rico 12 on meetings number 16, 75, and 208. And I'm grateful for his willingness to come back on short notice as our scheduled speaker had to reschedule for a future date. And I look forward to hearing his message today on his chosen topic, Sober is Not Well. First, for a little bit of business, Rico 12 has several recovery resources in our family of podcasts and social media communities. To learn more, listen more, connect more, or just hang out and learn and grow with us, you can check out the other podcasts, Noodle It Out with Nikki M., which releases every Tuesday, the Big Book Roundtable with David G. and Nikki M., which releases every Thursday. And to learn more about each of these podcasts, check out the chat or show notes, or go to rico12.com, reco12.com. And you can also join in our social communities, our WhatsApp group, our Facebook page, our Instagram account. And I'll put all that information here in the chat here and also in the show notes. Rico 12 is self-supporting, and your contributions help us continue our mission. Thanks this week. We had a really big donation week this week, and I'm so grateful to Barbara, Sean, Chrissy, Chris, Patrick, Lisa, Avig, Nika, and Heather for being new and repeat contributors and for being spearheads and supporting the Rico 12 cause. It's been an amazing and very helpful week. If you also feel the desire to become a spearhead and support this cause, please visit rico12.com/support or click the links that will be in the chat and the show notes for one-time or monthly donation options. Your support makes a big difference in keeping us able to share these messages of recovery. We look forward each meeting to receiving from the light reflected from our speakers. That light inspires hope, meaning, worth, and growth in us, the listening audience. Now I'm going to introduce our guest speaker for today, Dennis T., and just give a little background information on him and then turn the floor over to him. Dennis T. in Alaska is sober since July 29th of 2014. He came into the program after experiencing 40 years of pain and destruction and being unable to stop. The program has given him principles and tools to practice and live by on a daily basis. His experience showed him that only not doing left him sick and suffering, and the only path to freedom was by utterly abandoning himself to the God of his understanding. Then, as time passed, everything began to change, and we get to hear some of that change today. Dennis, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you very much, Justin. And I just want to pray that I get out of the way and let God lead this today. When you said this was short notice, I said sober is not well. And this morning in my meditation, I really believe God showed up. So when I came into program, my goal was to get sober and still is to stay sober. But I learned as I started going through these steps that sober is not well. The first part of step one tells us that it's two parts, really. It's that I'm powerless over my sexaholism. I am a sexaholic, a drug addict, alcoholic, grateful member of Al-Anon. But it tells me that I'm powerless over my sexaholism. Powerless means that I do have an allergy of the body and I have an obsession of the mind that will convince me that it's okay to take a drink. The second part of that is that my life is unmanageable. I always believed that my life was unmanageable because of my drinking of lust or whatever I was using. But I really found that my life was unmanageable. My soul suffering comes from a spiritual disconnection. And I came into this program with a very strong faith tradition. In our book, the White Book, Roy Kay, our founder, says that a belief without surrender avails us nothing. And I'd like to, I guess, take a moment and just read that because it's really a powerful start to, it's on page 20 if any of you ever want to read along with it. But I came into the program and I begged God 1,000 times, God, please take this, just take this. And in my experience, God wouldn't take it. And even with a very strong faith tradition, he didn't take it. But here's what it says: I didn't realize that the essence of being human is to have free choice. God doesn't want to remove from me the possibility of falling. He wants me to have the freedom to choose not to fall. I'd been praying self-righteously all along, please God, take it away, not realizing my inner heart was piteously whining, so I won't have to give it up. There was belief in God without surrender, and that belief availed nothing. I had never died to lust, and a belief in God without surrender availed me nothing. And I learned that the word faith is not the same as the word belief. And I think that's where I fell short, because I did have a belief, but I didn't realize until I went through the doctor's opinion where my faith was really at. And the doctor's opinion started to show me that either God is everything or he is nothing. Either God is or he's not. And I didn't understand really what that meant. But when I realized that faith means reliance upon, I believed I was relying upon God all along, but through going through the steps in this program, I could see where my reliance was on the self's will and was what I want. And as long as I wanted to live and hold on to my self's will, then I suffered on page 52. But they call it the bedevilments, but that's the second part of the unmanageability of the addiction. I can be totally sober, stone cold sober, living life. But if I'm not living it on reliance upon the light, upon the sunlight of the Spirit, upon the God of my understanding, which I'm going to choose to call God throughout this today, then even though I'm sober, I'm going to be suffering these bedevilments. And we turn them into questions on second paragraph. Am I having trouble with personal relationships while sober? I can't seem to control my emotional natures while sober. Do I fall prey to misery and depression? Does it affect the way I make a living? Do I have feelings of uselessness? And we're going to see that all through the book and all through recovery is about becoming useful to God. And was I full of fear, unhappy, and I couldn't seem to be of real help to other people? If I'm sober, I'm still suffering from the unmanageability of this program. And I mean, of my illness. And so the reason sober is not well is because I'm not connected to the sunlight of the Spirit. And my focus has to be to do more. And really, where that starts is step 4. Step 3 invites us as we go through page 60 in the big book, and we start getting to see, well, what is this self's will? Well, it tells us selfishness and self-centeredness that we think is the root of our troubles, because when I'm relying on the self, I'm relying on what I believe is the darkness. And the darkness is full of fear, 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity. I'm living completely in a state of self-centered fear. And what I want to get to and where recovery is a state of God-centered love. On page 122, it tells me, and this is why I think it's also important to get to a place of recovery. Working steps 4 through 9 of the spiritual program of action steps that accomplish that, and 10, 11, and 12 help me keep there. But it tells me on page 122 that very last paragraph, the cessation of drinking is but the first step away from a highly strained, abnormal condition. If I'm sober, but I'm not recovered, then I'm not living spiritually connected to the light. And I thought that if I just got sober, all would be well, but it wasn't. The next sentence is really what kind of hurts me when I have to think about all the pain that my family has gone through. It says, a doctor said to us, years of living with an alcoholic, a sexaholic, is almost sure to make any wife or child neurotic. The entire family is to some extent ill. That's my experience. Even if I'm sober, if the unmanageability of living with the self's will, living in this darkness, my family that is around me is suffering horribly bad. I am having trouble with personal relationships just because I'm still selfish. I'm still trying to get what I need so that I'm okay. And in my wife's case, after years of living with me, she really has PTSD around it. My children have suffered. When you look up the word neurosis, and if don't know if this is your experience, with my experience, I when I read this, I thought, wow, this is my family. A mental condition that is not caused by organic disease, involving symptoms of stress, parentheses, depression, anxiety, obsessive behavior, hypochondria, but not a radical loss of touch with reality. And that's the suffering that my family experiences when I'm just sober. I'm still suffering. I'm still not well. I can't be present. The only place I can find God is in the present moment. That's where the light is. And I wrote an article called Running for High Ground and one called The Invisible Beam. But if I'm in myself's will and I'm sober, they're being affected by this. And they don't even realize that they're suffering and they're getting sick. And they have to get away from that. So I have to go forward into the light. This morning in my meditation, thinking about what I would share in here today, what came into my meditation was this visual of the light versus the darkness, the sinful nature versus God's will. And my thought is, because I've heard that, well, there's a war going on between the light and the dark. And see, I don't believe that's true, because the light is all powerful and the light crushes the darkness. There's no battle at all. So my question was, well, if that's the case, why is there so much darkness? And I believe what God laid on my heart today is because you have free will. I have free will to hold on to the darkness, which I get to say, I want what I want. And that darkness is what's been keeping me in bondage. And versus I need, where God can come in and take care of my needs. For my whole life, I've been doing God's job, trying to take care of me. And it says in the third step that I have a new employer, being all powerful. He will provide what I need if, and there's the conditional statement, I stay close to him, which means if I stay in the light and if I perform his work well. Step 12. Recently, I was reading that every action that I take is planting seeds. When a plant is like a tree is planted, it starts to grow. And over years, it starts to develop fruit. And that fruit is what either I'm planting seeds on a daily basis, being in the darkness, planting those seeds in the darkness, or I'm doing my recovery actions. I'm staying close to God. I'm helping others. I'm being connected. And those seeds are also being planted. When I came into this program, I was in a forest of darkness that had been planted for many, many years, that had grown and was still very strong. And when I got into that third step where I made a decision to turn my will and my life, my thoughts and my actions over to the care of God, really what I was saying is, I'm going to stop relying on this darkness, and God, I'm going to come to you. And when I first got here, I'm telling you, I remember telling God, God, you're not better than my lust. You're not better than my drug. And God was, I believe he celebrated like, yes, let me show you what I can do. Now there's no comparison. But we got into that fourth step. And what happened in that fourth step was all of these resentments were just locked in, and all of these fears and all of these sex and harms. That I had a forest of darkness and very little bit of light stuff that had been planted. So as we started into that four-step process, a lot of that started getting cleaned out. And a lot of that light started to come, being able to shine in. And I remember, and it's one of the most important tools that I got out of doing my four-step. It was easy for me in self to write down who it was, and in 19 words or less, what they did to me, and then to really take a look. And we do the third column a little different, where because we're going through the fourth step looking at how is self actually doing this. This has nothing to do with the drinking or the drugs, because I always believed that that the drinking and the drugs was causing all my problems. But the truth is, when I didn't have them, the problems were still there. That's why I was drinking. So that's really not the problem. My lust is not the issue. While it causes a lot of problems, it's not the issue. But as I started praying for all these people I was resenting in that prayer work that we go through, it was just amazing that every time that we had to pray until I felt nothing but love and compassion for that person, never to be brought up or charged against them again. And there was an individual in particular that had really done me wrong, something that would I could have had a part of my career that could have been like what would be the major leagues. He blocked it, and I hated him for it, and I couldn't let it go. And I remember going through every day, doing my going and taking time and going through my prayer work. And it was 3 months, and I still couldn't let this go because never to be charged or spoke about it again. I was down by a duck pond, and in the back of my truck, the sun was shining, had my coffee, and I was going through prayers. And I could just, some of the people, I just would start the prayer. It's quite a lengthy prayer, and he would just be lifted up. I could just see it. I would say the rest of the prayer, but I didn't even have to do the whole thing. It was just like, shoom, gone. Do I mean it? Never to be brought up or checked or charged against them again. Check, check, check. And I thought to myself, man, maybe I should try him again. I didn't think it would happen because I've done it many, many times. So I did the prayer work for him, and I'm telling you, it just lifted out of me. I felt nothing but love and compassion for this man, never to be brought up or charged against them again. About a week later, I was in a business meeting at our work, and the people hadn't gone there, and one guy was there, and he started sharing with me what this guy had done to him. And I'm like, whoa. And the temptation was there to bring it up, but I remembered never to be brought up or charged against him again. And in that moment, I said, yeah, that sounds really hard. But see, that seed didn't get planted. That oak that was in the darkness that was covering had been removed. And so moving forward, every decision as I go through each day, I focus on planting seeds of light. I'm taking recovery actions. And what happens is it doesn't happen overnight, just like a tree doesn't. But when it starts producing fruit, and self-control is one of the fruits that gets produced, it's not my power. I never had any power. Even when I was relying on the darkness, I didn't have any power to stop that. I don't have any power to do anything other than continue to stay close to God, keep planting those seeds, keep taking recovery actions. And I mean, I do it every day. It says to pick up my cross, to stay in that light every day. I've taken a couple of vacations recently, and before early in recovery, the first 6, 7 years, if I took a vacation, I had meetings planned, sponsees planned. Last two I took, man, I just wanted to just go and live free. In about 4 or 5 days, I could start feeling the effects of my illness. It was just like I couldn't believe. Um, thank God it didn't take me out, because when I recognized it, I got on started texting sponsees, hey, you guys want to meet today? They're like, yeah, we've been missing you. So, and I'm talking hours, I was back sharing with sponsees, and I was back, went to a face-to-face meeting. The most powerful thing for recovery is working with others. And I had to learn to not work with others to help and save them, because I can't. I work with others so that I could perfect and enlarge my spiritual life. At the bottom of 14, it says, faith without works was dead, and held appallingly true for the sexaholic. First, if a sexaholic failed to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life, how? Through work and self-sacrifice for others, he could not survive the certain trials and low spots ahead. So those 4 through 9 was there to clear out that forest. And once that self had got deflated, and I was started to experience that sunlight, like it says in the third step, it's all about being useful to God. The 11th step is all about being a channel. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help. There it is. That's why he's going to take them away. Of thy power, That's what I needed first. I just need his power. Help me with this temptation of his love. That's what I started to receive. And then his way of living. That's when everything was changing. That's where recovery is is at. Is I need to continue every day to take my medicine, which means staying in the present moment. The self or the darkness will try to pull me out with fear about what's coming in the future. I don't have to worry about that. I can make a plan, but I don't plan the outcome. Or it'll try to drag me into the past with a resentment. Either way, it can't exist in the present moment. If I leave the present moment, I'm back in the darkness. Uh, so if I get a drop of resentment that comes in, it doesn't matter. It's an indication that the darkness is back. See, I wish the light would just stay permanently. But if I let up on my program, that's why we have to do it daily. I slide out of my bed every morning daily. That darkness just washes in. It just does. It's just like the default. It's going to take back over. And so I get to, when I spot it, continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. For me, it's self-pity. Victim mentality is a big one of mine. That lets me know that the darkness is back and that I'm getting pulled away. And so it's I get to take my medicine every day so that I can stay in the light, that I can stay in recovery. And when I'm in recovery, me and my wife enjoy intimacy, which is into me, you see. We hold hands, we take walks because I'm present. If I'm in the darkness, I'm going 100 miles an hour and I can't be with her. And I'm just not well. So sober is definitely not well. And I don't know how much time I have left. If you're going to give me a notice there, brother.
You got about 8 minutes.
Okay. So sober is not well. Um, and I can't, at least for me, if I'm not living in the light every day, I won't be able to stay sober. There's no way. It tells me on page 64, that's one of my favorite pages, is we just made the decision to turn our will and our life over to the care of God. That was only a beginning. But 64 tells me, because I just came in, I learned about the grave nature of my illness from the first 43 pages, that I have an allergy of the body and an illness of the mind. I never knew why I was restless, irritable, and discontent unless I can again experience the ease and comfort what comes at once by taking a drink. I was already restless, irritable, and discontent. Well, why before I take the drink? It's because I'm spiritually disconnected. I didn't know it. My illness is spiritual disconnection. And on the top of 64, it says, though our decision, which is my third step, to turn my will and my life over to the care of God, it's just a decision. It has no effect to do anything other than make that decision. Was a vital and crucial step. I have to decide that. The little spirit Dennis inside that's been relying on the darkness his whole life has to make a decision. I'm going to start relying on the light. Well, then it tells me that it'll have little permanent effect. That decision won't last very long unless at once followed by a strenuous effort to face and be rid of the things in myself which had been blocking me. That forest of darkness is what's been blocking me the whole time. Our lust was but a symptom. If I had a chunk of metal in me and I took some aspirins for the relief as it got more and more infected. And after about a year of just taking aspirins every day, the doctor goes, "Hey, you got to quit taking those aspirins. They're killing you. They're affecting your life." I would go to a meeting where I would stop using the aspirins. And after about a month, people go, "Wow, great job. How'd you do it?" And then after a year, I get a chip, a 1 year without aspirins. But all the while, the steel is still there, infected. I'm still in pain. I'm still suffering. But I'm celebrating being sober from taking those aspirins. That's the insanity of, to me, a program that just focuses on getting sober. It's like, man, I think the only reason that should be there to show me that I can't do it without the sunlight of the spirit, that my life is still suffering. Because when I'm sober, I'm still very much insane. I need more. I need 4 through 9 to get free from the suffering of this darkness that is my sinful nature, that is my self's will, And the price I pay so that I get what I want or I can do what I want is a lifetime of misery. It's family members that are being harmed. And when I step into that light and start living there, and it like it says in the 11th step, um, God, show me what my next steps are to be. Provide what I need for such problems, especially removing any self-will. The longer I live in the light, it tells me that after I've tried this for a while, gradually and as time passes, this will grow. So today, I'm going to continue planting seeds of light, staying in the light. And the more those grow, the more my recovery is. It's not so I can let up. Now I don't have to work so hard. No, it's so that I can enjoy the fruits of living in the light. It's a new way of living. It's a life free from the anxiety. Now, it doesn't mean that things in my life hasn't happened that were hard, but it just meant that going through those in the light was a completely different experience. And the biggest thing is today is if I'm going to leave the light, I want to leave the light less time and harm less people when I'm there. Because 100%, if I'm outside the light, I will harm people because I need them to do what I need them to do. So I'm okay. And living like that is a very, it's a destructive way of living. Living in the light, man, I get up, I hang out, I meditate, I work with other people, I go to meetings, I have a fellowship. About half the way through the day, me and my wife, the rest is our time. I get to live life, I get to recapture life back, and I don't need my drug because I have what I've always been looking for, and that's the sunlight of the spirit. And with that, I'll pass.
Thank you so much, Dennis. You said several things that just were really meaningful to me. We're now going to move into the question and answer phase of this meeting. I've written down a few questions. We've gotten a question from our live audience, and a reminder to our live audience here, if you have a question for Dennis, please type it in the chat. If you want to remain anonymous, just make a note to that or send me a direct message, and I'll keep I won't announce your first name. If you just want if you're okay with your first name being announced, just send it over and I'll do that. Anyways, Dennis, the first question I want to ask you is based on one of the last things you said. You said, I need others to do what I need them to do so that I am okay. This really hits me hard. It's something that I think I'm being helpful with others when I give suggestions or invitations or whatever. But in the end, I often realize, or not often, but I've started to come to realize that it's so that I can be okay. If they change the way I want them to change or the way I think it's best for them to change, I will be okay. Talk to us a little bit more about that and the potential dangers of that type of thinking.
Yeah, for me, if I'm living in that darkness, I have this huge void that I'm trying to fill with anything and everything. I'm trying to be okay. And without realizing it, and part of what you're describing, I believe, is the non side of our program, which means that I've been affected by another addict somewhere. And a lot of times that it's much like the actor who's trying to run the whole show. When I'm connected to the sunlight of spirit, I feel at peace. I don't feel like I need to get outside of my little acre of land and start looking at other people's. The minute I do, I lose my peace and serenity. But if I don't know what's best for me, then I certainly can't know what's best for them because I would try to relieve them of any pain, any struggle, any suffering instead of what may be necessary. And I think the biggest thing that scared me when I realized just how much I tried to control, manage, and fix everybody around me was I was told that, Dennis, it was about my daughter, you're acting as her higher power and you're actually blocking her off from finding hers and relying upon her higher power. And I learned that unsolicited advice was criticism. Nobody's ever, when I give them advice trying to fix it, they never was like thankful. They would resist that and offend that. Well, that's me playing God. And I go, well, I'm just trying to be helpful. Well, helpfulness is the sunny side of control. And the whole point is when I'm trying to control, I'm playing God. If I have a resentment, I have to, a lot of times I'll ask my sponsees, they're like, oh, tangled up in a resentment. Or worse yet, they don't even see the resentment. They're calling up, I'm lusting, I'm getting ready to lose my sobriety. I'm like, well, what's the expectation? Because an expectation is a resentment that is forming. And if I have an expectation, I'm back to trying to control something. If I'm trying to manage and control outcomes, I'm in my illness. And I need to recognize that, man, I need to just set in the peace and serenity of the loving arms of my God, of my understanding. That's his job, not mine. My job is to be a channel of his peace. Wherever I go today, God, how would you use me today? What would you have me? If I'm running into somebody, how would you use me? When Justin asked me to come in to this speaker meeting, I'm like, then this is what God has for me today. So it's about the control. And when I get into fear, I need to control. And I'm supposed to be watching for uh, selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. Those are the soldiers of self. That's the darkness that's flowing back in like a tide that's going to take back over. Because if I do nothing and don't work my program, the darkness is always, it will cover the light up. The light won't cover it up unless I turn to the light. But the darkness has no problem trying to regain that control. And then I'm just a puppet trying to do the same thing that it done to me. I'm trying to control and manage because I think I know best and because I need to be okay. And I'll pass with that.
Yeah, and that concept of I need to be okay is really powerful. I may come back to this in a little bit, but we've got a couple of questions that came in from the live audience. This one's from an anonymous attendee. They said, "There's much uncertainty in my life right now, and especially in terms of finding employment. I'm struggling with, am I doing too much? Not enough? Am I playing God in this situation? How do you balance doing the next right thing and letting go and letting God?"
Boy, that's really powerful. And I think your first statement, I think you know that. Am I doing too much? Um, this is just my opinion. I can tell you what my experience is that go to God, hand it over to him, and rest and wait on him. Now, do we have to take the next right move? Yeah, something will come up. You'll go, oh, I'll call this person. But it's not me trying to force it because if I'm trying to force it, I believe that every time God shuts a door, there's that hallway that I don't know what's happening. I don't like it. But when that other door opens, I'm like, oh, if I knew what the door that was going to be opened by God was going to be there, I would have been glad that he shut the door. So if you're in that case, man, if you'll let go of this, I think exactly what God has for you will be amazing. So you can set right now into the kind of the excitement that, okay, God, I'm going to give this over to you. You are there to meet all my needs. And I'm going to let you, it's all yours. And in my experience, I can't wait. I don't know who you are, you're anonymous, to hear. I tell my sponsors this, I can't wait to hear the story of how God stepped in and took care of that for you. That's our third step. I'm going to turn my will and my life over to the care of. The care of means I'm going to give him the control. I'm going to give up. I can make a plan, but I don't plan the outcome. I can submit applications or whatever. We don't have time here to tell you about a medical thing that I had. I prayed and I had peace. Next thing I know, God opened a door. I don't know why I went there, but it just all unfolded. He's working if you allow him, but God won't override your free will. He's waiting. Don't let that light come in and just give it all to the light and say, I'm going to rest and see. But so I think you said it when you said, am I doing too much? I think intuitively you kind of know that, but I can't say anything for sure. But that's what I feel in my heart when you shared that.
Hmm.
Let
Thank you
him
for
give
sure.
it to you. Yep.
Yeah, very good, Dennis. I appreciate that. And it rang true to me too. Thank you. Another question I have for you is you mentioned that early in your sobriety, you said something to God, said something like, you know what? I don't think you're better than my drug. I don't think you're better than my lust. How has God become better than your drug, better than your lust over
Oh
the
man,
years?
it's it's like getting this beautiful loaf of fresh baked bread versus the moldy little crumbs that I was feeding on. There is no comparison. And I can tell you that if I stop, the darkness comes in, I'll need those moldy little pieces of bread. But what happens is the longer I stay in the light, the longer I keep working my program every day, the more that when I'm in that light and I'm enjoying time with my wife and we're just like walking together, I'm working with sponsees and I'm loving it. When that darkness comes back in, there's such a contrast between the light and the darkness, where before I had nothing but the darkness and a little bit of light, a little bit of light. But as time passes, coming up on 10 years, and I'm not 10 years it's not about 10 years of sobriety, it's about being connected to the light. When I go back into the darkness, it's like, whoa, what am I doing back here? Man, I've got a resentment. I've got all this fear. I'm trying to control. I don't want to live there anymore. So it's not a matter of um, losing my sobriety. It's a matter of, man, there's just so much destruction there. I don't want to give up being connected to God. And I don't believe I can have that without taking my daily medicine because I'm an addict. And my addiction is not to the lust or drugs or alcohol. My addiction is to be spiritually disconnected and connected to my self's will again, suffering. And I don't want to suffer like that no more. I want the freedom that comes from being with God. And if I do nothing, I automatically go back to the darkness. Just that's the way it works.
Hmm. I think that leads perfectly into the next couple of questions from an anonymous attendee here. I'm going to ask these. When you find yourself sober and in darkness, what are the immediate first things you do to get back into the light?
Beautiful. Go to it's on 84 through 87. Uh, because if I've already done 4 through 9, I've cleaned out the forest. So it tells me it's the 10th step and the 11th step, the nightly review. If I do my nightly review every night, I really get to see where I'm at. Something I read the other day, I love it. Step 5, which is really confessing what's going on, cleanses the it cleanses the darkness out. It cleanses the wrong, but it doesn't stop the wrongdoing because I have a nature that will go against God any chance it can if it's given a chance to grow and get some control. So the 10th step tells me that I have to continue to watch. And it tells us we have to continue this for a lifetime. That's how long I'm going to practice this. And a lifetime doesn't is really means all through the day, every day. And see, when I first did my 10th step years ago, I thought, okay, I'm going to watch for resentments. I would be so deep into a resentment and disturbance, I could never see it coming. Living in the light, what I notice is that the light, the spirit shows it to me. The spirit shows that I'm being disturbed. And then, so the big question is at that moment, am I willing? Is the darkness already taken over too much where, man, I'm just not willing. Did you see what they did? I want to hold on to that resentment. I want to hold on to my self pity. It's like a little cup of hot chocolate with a nice warm blanket on a cold day where I can just sit over there in my stuff. But it's deadly. And I'm living back in the darkness. So the moment I'm doing this 10th step all through the day, if I find in that moment I'm not willing, I better do two things. Number one, I go to God immediately. Step 6 tells me on page 76, and it's so important. It's just one paragraph, a whole step in one paragraph, but it's really one of the most important in all the steps, I think, because it tells me we've emphasized the willingness as being indispensable. Are we now ready to let God remove from us all the things which we have admitted are objectionable? We go through this work with the self being the issue. Is self objectionable? right now, is my ego in play? And I'm not like, whoa, this is scary, man. I do not want to be around this. Can he now take them all of me, everyone? If we still cling to something, we will not let go. Here's the spiritual principle and a tool. We ask God. Ask means pray for the willingness. If I get tangled up in a resentment and I'm not talking about a resentment that 10 minutes later I'm dealing with, an hour, a day. I'm just shocked sometimes. A sponsor will call and it's like, well, I had a resentment since yesterday. I'm like, oh, dude, that's so deadly. I'm talking seconds. If I get disturbed, I have seconds. And if I'm not willing, I pray for the willingness. I can't have even one drop of resentment. I cannot, because that tells me one of the soldiers of self is back. And if it's coming back, that darkness is flooding in. The longer I hold on to that, the more strength it builds. And today, man, I want to go because I'm going to have it. I want to go at once, ask God at once to remove it. God, I need your light. Take me back to the present. Gratitude takes me back to the present. It's a great way to get back there. The second part, though, is I talk to somebody immediately. And I need to not do this program alone. I need to be sharing with guys that I trust and women to women with they trust, their people in their programs that they trust, and tell the truth. If I'm wanting to look good, I'm in the darkness. Because the minute I tell the truth, even as hard as it may be, I'm free. It's gone. It's like a leaf. There's a creek and a bridge. Turn that over, and that leaf hits that water and goes under that bridge. It's gone forever. I heard somebody say the other day, the only thing that you and I know that my higher power doesn't know is the past. I'm already forgiven. The thing is, am I going to hold on to it to protect my ego, or am I going to every day share the truth about how sinful my nature is? Not that I'm losing my sobriety or going down there, but I need to tell the truth, because then that light can come in and I can truly live free. So if you don't have somebody in your life to send this nightly review to on the top of 86, find somebody, write this every night. When you retire at night is not when you are sliding into bed dead tired, but after you've had your meal, getting ready to go into the evening. Answer the questions. And we have a little template. If anybody wants that, we'll get provided. Justin could get that to you. Fill that out and get it to somebody. And what's happened is you'll go through your day and you'll see, oh man, that's going to go on my nightly review if I judge this person. I'm talking like me and my wife sometimes like to watch these little game shows. And I'll be like wanting to judge them. I'm like, oh, there it is. I can't judge people. I can't have resentment towards people. They're just being people. But that darkness will come back in if I allow a resentment. If I have some fear, I'm either living in self-centered fear or God-centered love, and I want to live in that light. And I can't do it perfectly, but the principles, and that's why we practice them, because then they become second nature. We'll just get a resentment. I'm like, oh, okay, I can't have that. I'll go. I don't have time for my self's will to convince me. I don't get to entertain that and play it, because that's a drink of resentment. It'll take me out. I got to stop drinking. And the drinking is what the darkness is always offering me. Pass.
Yeah, and on that resentment, the next this is flowing very very smoothly, and you've addressed a little bit of this, but the next anonymous question says you mentioned about resentments never to be brought up or charged. Can you
Yeah.
talk about your process for removing resentment in the moment? You've hit on that a little bit here. Let's talk a little bit more about that.
Well, first off, the purpose of the four-step resentment inventory, and especially after we've done the prayer work, we're free from it. The fourth column says, God, show me my mistakes. And what happens when God shows me those, I'm writing them down. I can't see it. I can't see any patterns. I'm just writing them down as God gives them to me. I don't want to write out of my intellect. We get with the fifth step. My sponsor did with me. I do with sponsees. And all of a sudden, as that spirit flows, it's like, whoa, I start seeing, oh man, I disconnect from people. I talk bad about people. It's like all of my mistakes, my sponsor was able to, and then he would go ask me on each person, Dennis, go back to what they did. Is this even true? And when I'm awakened, no, that's not even true. I'm taking what people are saying and twisting it so that I can be a victim. Everybody driving is doing something to me. My wife is doing something to me. The people in the meetings are doing something to me. It's not true. In the darkness, I believe it. In the light, I know it's not true. They're just being in their self's will. They're not even thinking about me, but I'm making everything about me. The prayer I use is this, and you can put the person's name in what if you have a resentment on somebody that you would like to pray this prayer with, and we'll get this prayer to you as well. And this is all out of the big book. This is out of page 67, bottom 66, top of 67, and page 552. God, help me to realize that so and so is perhaps spiritually sick, just like me. And before this next one, think about somebody that you had a resentment that, you don't hate them, but if you got a call that, hey, this person just got in an accident, they've got maybe an hour to live and they're asking for you, and you ran to that person, could be a family member or a friend, and they held their little hand out and you put your hand in theirs, would the resentment you're holding on to them in that moment really matter? No, it really wouldn't. What matters is being with them. That's the life we want. So every person, before we start the prayer work, we put them in, that's called the sick man's prayer. We put them in that bed. We stand next to them and hold their hand. And I pray, God, help me to realize that this person is spiritually sick, just like me. They're spiritually disconnected. How else can they act? They're trying to survive. Help me to show them the same tolerance, pity, and patience I would cheerfully grant a sick friend in the hospital. And God, everything I would want for myself, I pray that you give to this person. Give them abundant health, prosperity, and happiness. And God, bless them with love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and goodness and faithfulness and self-control. And God, wherever they're at, I pray for their protection and their serenity. And God's mostly, I pray that your power and presence would enter their heart so thy will be done all the days of their life. After I pray that prayer, usually I can feel it there, that resentment is gone. It just leaves. If it doesn't, I say, did I mean that? Do I feel that? If I don't, I pray, God, help me. But if I can feel it leave, then I check them off, never to be brought up or charged against them again. Somewhere down the way, that thought will come up, just like an alcohol temptation, food temptation, lust temptation, drug temptation. That's deadly. That's right up from the darkness. And the minute it gives me that, I get to go, God, I am powerless. I need your power. Please lend me your power just for today. Take this. Because if I entertain that or drink that, I'm going to get sick. I'm just going to get drunk off of it. And I'm really getting drunk off that darkness again. And it has me. And then I can't drink enough to satisfy that, where I'll eventually go back. See, the 911 or the emergency isn't when I'm getting ready to act out or getting ready to drink or use drugs. The 911 happened, or the emergency happened far before that. It's when that first thought came to mind. Same in Jim and Fred's story. The thought suddenly came to mind. Why is that thought coming to mind? Because that darkness is rolling back in. And that's the point, like in the 10 step, that I need to take immediate action so that I can work the program. Why? To get reconnected. So I have a spiritual connection. And it tells me when the spiritual malady is overcome, I straighten out physically and mentally. And that's true. Those aren't just words. And my default is to go back to my darkness, take on the control, suffer like heck. And then right before I'm ready to lose everything, like, oh, God, help. And I need to do it when that first thought comes in. And if I can live like that, which I can't perfectly, no means, because if I get disturbed and upset, and especially with my wife, it's very difficult. But if I'll take a pause, I'll go to God, I'll make a call, or I'll post a 10 step, man, I have a lot better chance of living in the light today. Pass.
Thank you, Dennis. Got another question in here from the live audience, an anonymous attendee. And this is a very interesting question. I want to go through this and see what your take is on it. They say, I've only been sober for a couple of days and I'm told that I need to work with others in order to stay sober. I have started a meeting in my area where there is none, but have struggled with reaching out and notifying people in the area about the meeting because I know I haven't been sober very long and feel like I have nothing to give and don't want to create a bad impression of the program to the newcomer. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Listen to exactly what you said. Well, I know I haven't been sober for very long. Who's telling you that? You see, that's the illness right there, trying to defeat you and keep you in darkness. Because it knows if people start showing up and you guys start fellowshipping, you're going to start getting better. Listen to that voice, how it's trying to defeat you. Who cares? Start the meeting, go to a meeting and be there. Put out advertisements. Use that as a time to work your program. Meet with people, maybe do a hybrid meeting. If you have a place where there's no meetings and you have an opportunity to set one up, my goodness, go for it. Because here's the deal. That will tell you that, like, I'm relying upon having something to give somebody. I ain't got nothing. I have nothing to give my sponsees. I show up every time and do the set aside prayer because I've got nothing. I have no power. I can't help them. I can't save them. Being with them, the light is what will come through. And I bet you if you take a call, somebody's sharing, I'll bet anything that there's prompting in your spirit that, oh, that you can share that with them. That's not coming from you. That's not coming from my grand knowledge, like I can bestow some. That's coming from God. And look at page 15 in the big book. This is so beautiful to answer exactly what you're talking about. Here's Bill. Now, Bill is sober. He's rocking. He's got sponsees. He's doing the whole thing. And right in the middle of the first full paragraph, I was not too well at the time. Wow, there you go. That's me a lot of times. And was plagued by waves of self-pity and resentment. Maybe not emotionally sober. This sometimes nearly drove me back to drink, but I soon found that when all other measures failed, work with another alcoholic, sexaholic would save the day. Many times I've gone to my old hospital in despair. On talking to a man there, I would be amazingly lifted up on my feet, amazingly be lifted up and set on my feet. It is designed for living that works in rough going. The enemy or the darkness will convince you, well, you got to be spiritually fit on the top of the spiritual mountain to help others. No, we help others so that we get spiritually fit, not the other way around. We really the question I would ask you is, are you willing to show up and let God use you? If you're willing to show up, God will use you, and you will be amazingly lifted up and set on your feet. That's the truth. And what is it going to hurt to do it? It won't. It'll help you, and it'll help that person. Because remember, why do we come into the program? Because we're spiritually disconnected and isolated. So when I come into the meeting, just meeting with these people in the meetings or another person, that spiritual disconnection is being broken. I'm being healed by being with another person. Just get rid of any thought, because it comes from, and the ego is what we have to surrender, that I have to somehow have something to give somebody. I don't. And read together and let God, just whatever is prompted in your spirit, because I can tell you right now, me and you could get together and I could share something with you, and I can't see me, but you'd be able to see it really clear. And if you're just being honest with me and listening to the spirit, you go, well, it sounds like you're thinking about yourself a lot right now, Dennis. Be, oh, yeah, that's it. See, we're blind, but another person can see us. You can see into others, especially if you surrender, let go of any ego of trying to save another, just be with somebody. That's my thoughts. I believe that. And man, I would encourage you, how lucky you are to get to go start a meeting. And don't miss that opportunity, because that's we don't sponsor to save others. We sponsor so we stay well. Because I got nothing to give them. Pass.
Beautiful. Thank you. And Dennis, one thing that you've brought up here, and you and I, we've spoken a few times here, and this concept of self, and you've said this a couple of times, an ego. And who's saying that to you? That's a question you often ask. Who is it that's telling you that you can't start this meeting? Talk to us a little bit about this self and this self apostrophe S will, self's will, and how that is the enemy.
Well, I mean, I'm just going to tell you, if you go to page 60, read this whole section from 60 on through the end of it's what the book is telling me, right? Because it's not telling me, well, the first requirement is that we be convinced that any life run using lust or alcohol can hardly be a success. That's not what it's saying. The first 43 pages talked about the addiction. Now they're talking about the illness that only recovery can fix or can heal. The first requirement is that we be convinced that any life run on, we put apostrophe as self's will, can hardly be a success because, like it says, when that darkness is coming in or the light, I get to choose. I should say I need to surrender. I don't know that I have the power. I get to choose which one I'm relying upon. Coming in, I don't have that choice. And it takes working and working to realize, whoa, there's power over here. All I got to do is call upon that power. So the first requirement is that we be convinced that any life run on self's will can hardly be a success. On that basis, we are almost always in with collision with something or somebody, even though our motives are good. Most people try to live on self propulsion. See, works without faith is self propulsion. The purpose is that faith is reliance upon. So, really, what am I relying upon? And it goes on to tell me all about the actor, right? Tells me selfishness, self centeredness. Down in the next 62. So, our troubles we think are basically of our own making. They arise out of alcohol or lust? No, they arise out of our self, this self's will. And the alcoholic is the extreme example of self's will run riot. So, they're trying to say, hey, listen, yeah, you have an addiction, you have an allergy, you have an obsession of the mind that'll convince you to drink. But that's not what's causing all this. What's causing all this is the self's will, is the ego, the pride, and we can't see it. And so ask yourself the next time you're getting beat up, is this from your higher power or is this from the self's will? Because the self's will it's not going to go quietly. That voice that I hear that's negative, and it's either going to build me up above you so that I'm better, so I can feel good, or it's going to beat the heck out of me because I'm not perfect. Because remember, what is that self's will really wanting? To be exalted, to be affirmed and praised. And it's deadly because I'm telling you, I have to use a whole lot of drugs and alcohol to survive and live in there. And it doesn't work. I can't use enough lust and drugs and alcohol to survive the emptiness I feel so that I can be in control. And it's really not me. That's why I refer to as there's the little spirit Dennis that all along cries, please don't do this. No, I want to follow God. And then there's the big Dennis that says, shut the heck up, get on the bus, we're going. I didn't know I never had any power over that guy. I don't. But I learned that little Dennis, when he's on the bus, can go, wait a minute. He stands up and goes, I surrender. And the light crushes in. So all I can do is stand up and say, I surrender. I don't want him to keep running the show. What they say is, my ego is not my amigo. He's not, he's my tormentor. So if whatever that voice is that is convincing you to do or beating you up, and that's not from your higher power. And love yourself well by turning to your higher power. And how do I turn to my higher power? I work steps 4 through 9 and then 10, 11, and 12 every day. I can learn about them and know them, but if I don't practice them, I'm not going to have any progress. And it's over and over in the book says, as time passes, this is a growth. Every year that goes by that you're planting those seeds of light, the light grows. We get to live differently, but it is a process. Pass.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Dennis. A beautiful and fantastic RICO 12 speaker meeting. If anybody else had any questions out there that you'd like to ask, you can post those on our WhatsApp group. You could also send those via email. I can connect you with Dennis through email. Send me an email at rico12pod@gmail.com. The resources that were mentioned here will be posted in the show notes of the podcast. I'll also post them in the WhatsApp group. And if you would like them, you can send me an email. Once again, we'll get those to you. Next week, we'll be hearing from Fred M., who is a first-time RICO 12 speaker. Fred will be speaking on the topic of becoming an instrument, and I really look forward to his talk. Just everybody, I know that there are things that were said today and said in each of these meetings that are out there touching somebody, myself included, and making a big difference. So keep coming back to these RICO 12 meetings. Keep helping spread the word, because it's just a good thing. And bring people into your rooms of recovery. Share the message with them. Work with God. Be an instrument in God's hands. Dennis, do you have a prayer that you'd like to launch us off with?
7-step prayer.
All
Because
right.
I do want to ask God to have all of me, good and bad, because there are both. So, my Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. And I pray now you remove from me every single defect of character that stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Let me live in your light. Amen. That's it.
Amen. Thank you, Dennis. Remember, everybody, there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find God now. Keep coming back. It works when I work it, so work it. You are worth it.
I've seen stars fall from above. I've fallen in and out of love. I've been high and I've been low. Now I know I just can't do this on my own. I've seen a boy become a man. He got lost without a plan. He's so far away from home. Now I know that I just can't do this on my own. Your arms surrounding me. Your touch is grounding me. No longer searching for purpose all alone. 'Cause now I know that I just can't do this on my own. I'm looking for the words to say. You make the world a better place, and I can call that place my home. 'Cause now I know that I just can't do this on my own. Your arms surrounding me. Your touch is grounding me. No longer searching for purpose all alone. 'Cause now I know that I just can't do this on my own. So let me see just what you need to set you free, so we can be free. I saw stars fall from above. I fell in and out of love. I got high and I fell low. But now I know that I just can't do this on my own. No, I just can't do this on my own. I just can't do this on my own.